Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna. I pray everybody is doing well. I wanted to good. I promise to come back because I can't guarantee, that I'm gonna be able to do it tomorrow evening. So I said, let me come on here and just leave it, even if you come back later and listen in. We're going to be talking about relationships. This is the book. I didn't find it in storage. Y'all know I stopped by the storage and it's packed up. It ain't even like, laying on the top packed up. It's all the way packed up. So what I'm going to do is I found it online where I get to rent it from this online library. And it's free to rent, but nonetheless, I don't have long to read it unless I can be able to renew it. And so we're going to go ahead, and this is the book. This is the name of the book. It's available on Amazon. I just want to make sure that I could be heard because I found what was the problem earlier. And then I'm going to officially introduce the conversation. So I'm not going to do the 5-minute one. I'm going to do the 30-second one. I'll be right back. All right. We're back. Press your thumbs up and thumbs down on your way through the door. Hey, it's all about a conversation, right? With facilitating. So if you want a thumb up or thumbs down, share the video way through the door. Like I said, as promised, this is the name of the book, Forbidden Fruit, Love Stories from the Underground Railroad. There's some things that I want to be able to highlight that happened in the melanated relationship so we could kind of understand the dynamic as it came through the ages and how we got to where we are. But that's not what we're doing today. We're going off of the slave engagement picture, fiasco, debacle, and we're going to look at briefly um, we're going to look at briefly the history of interracial relationships um, coming from enslavement. So let me go ahead. Let me go ahead. Let me go ahead. This is the kind of stuff that informs conversation. I got a little bit of feedback on the other video, and I was just like, there's so much to say that, you know what, if we don't show up to class and be willing to have the conversation, I don't know what is. We need new information. We cannot continue to argue from old thought processes, assumptions, and all that. So this is at archive.org where you're able to rent this book. As you see, the borrowing ends at 7:34 unless I can renew it. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in here. It's suspicious lynchings, passings for white, passing for black, and mixed marriages in deadly times, a chronology. And really, I wanted to look at it for the mixed marriages portion. So among the most daring travelers on the Underground Railroad were the interracial couples who sometimes risked mutilation or death to marry. This historical timeline sets the stage for their stories. Okay, I know we want to reimagine it and to whatever we want it to be to make us feel comfortable, but let's go through it a little bit. 1619, a Dutch ship carries the first blacks to James, Virginia, where they became indentured servants, working for a fixed period of service. The population of Virginia is then about 2,000. Eventually, blacks slaves will replace the indentured servant system, providing a free pool of laborers who will find it more difficult to run off and hide, and whose dark skin and non-European culture allow them to be viewed as heathens doomed to a life of servitude because of sin of Noah's swarthy son Ham. So like we know, in many places in Europe where they had the feudal system, here there was an indentured servitude where many people who came over in the beginning had like a contract, some 6 years, some 7 years, depending on whatever they signed up for, and then after which time they will be set free, right? And so when they decided to go with the color system as a way and means to determine who was free, it helped them, quote unquote, to determine the free first versus the slave, as opposed to those system where everybody looks the same. Yeah, but I'm gonna jump down. Oh no, don't do this to me. Hold on, let me see. Oh man, come on, man. Oh gosh, let me see where it went now. Oh, here. Here's the chronology. Don't jump. Do not jump. I'm just going to have to be patient. This goes through a number of things, but I want to read some of them. As it relates to the relationship. Here we go. 1662. Virginia rules that children got by an English woman upon a Negro woman shall be bond or free according to the condition of the mother. Remember, I spoke about that earlier today, and I pulled up Elizabeth Grimstead. If we have time, we can go over her. If not, this is what this is talking about. And if any Christian shall commit fornication with a Negro man or woman, he shall pay double the fines of a former act. So this 1662 has to do with that Elizabeth Key Grimstead conversation and the fact that she sued. So they changed the laws in the court to say children got by an Englishman upon a Negro woman shall be bond or free according to the condition of the mother. Let's keep going. So this was progressive. It wasn't like, aha, I got you, I'm going to put you in slavery. That's not how it happened. It was progressive. They didn't wholly know what they were doing. And as time went along, people got bright ideas, right? In 1664, Maryland turns Negro servants into lifelong slaves, gaining a free labor source to help tame a new land. You can read this. Again, I gave you the name of the book, but for the sake of time, Maryland's 1681, Maryland's law is amended after the Irish Nell case in which a white woman claimed she'd been forced to marry a slave so a planter can get her labor free. The revised law exempts the woman from involuntary servitude if she's entrapped by her master. Nell Butler had married Negro Charles, the slave of Mary William Borman of St. Mary's County in August 1681. A Catholic priest conducted the ceremony, and Lord Baltimore is said to have been present on the day of the marriage and to have warned Nell of the consequences. After about a month, Maryland passed a law that released white servant women and their mixed-race children from slavery if the marriage was permitted or encouraged by the master. So again, like I said, as time goes on, you're going to begin to see the laws changing. It was a work in progress. Right, Quinty, what's going on? It was a work in progress, and the laws is changing as different things are happening. So now you're seeing where the European women who were enslaved, there's laws passing that if they're being impregnated by a melanated enslaved man, then that child shall be free. I said that earlier, and I just wanted to substantiate that. 1691 to 1725, the Virginia Assembly rules that any whites who marry Negroes, Indians, or mulattoes shall within 3 months be banished from his dominion forever. And it is further enacted that if any English woman, being free, shall have a bastard child by a Negro, she shall pay 15 pounds to the church wardens. And in default of such payment, she shall be taken in possession by the church warden and disposed of for 5 years, and the amount she brings shall be paid on 1/3 of their majesties for the support of the government, 1/3 to the support of the parish where the offense is committed, and the other third to the informer. The child shall be bound out by the church wardens until he is 30 years old. So this is discouraging the miscegenation or the mixing between the melanated male, and the European woman. Because if you hear what they say, a bastard child, if she has this child, she shall be fined. And if she cannot pay the fine, all of these things are going to happen because these laws are being put in place to discourage this behavior. But on the other side, laws are put in place to absorb the European man or the master or the planter class from being held accountable for impregnating the woman. So this is creating a culture that we also have to be mindful of as we're having these discussions. 1702, after a white woman named Anne Wall violates Virginia's ban on intermarriage, she is made a temporary slave for 5 years, and her 2 mulatto children are sold into involuntary servitude for 31 years. Remember, they made melanated people perpetual slaves, right? So as they're having this conversation, they took her children. The court rules that when Anne Wall's term of servitude expires, she shall be banished to Barbados, which is one of the colonies, if she returns to a home in Elizabeth City, Virginia. All of these are working laws, right? 1705, Virginia rules that any free white man or woman who intermarries with a Negro will be confined to prison for 6 months without bail and pay £10 to the parish. Ministers marrying such persons will be fined 10,000 pounds of tobacco. Why would they be making these rules if there weren't people on both sides trying to marry each other? There would be no need for making these rules if people on both sides weren't trying to marry each other. So for us to pretend like this wasn't happening and we're so offended and not realizing the history of people on both sides of the aisle seeing interest in the other person, again, this is not promotion. This is just identifying that this was a thing. Intermarriage is banned in 1705 in Massachusetts, in 1715 in North Carolina, 1717 in South Carolina, 1721 in Delaware, and in 1725 in Pennsylvania. Punishments for violating these laws vary. Free blacks who break these racial barriers can be enslaved, and those already enslaved can be sold away from their colony. White men and women who marry slaves can be fined, jailed, or also enslaved. Again, the picture we're seeing is this um, Hispanic woman sharing this. It says 1841, and then she goes through this whole conversation. There were real life implications for quote falling in love with a slave and trying to marry them. Okay. The laws create a class system that makes many poor whites feel superior to slaves and prevents them from uniting with slaves to challenge the wealthy. The law is aimed specifically at white women. I'll say that again and much slower. The law is aimed specifically at white women and designed to protect the economic interests of slaveholders who do not want white women to produce mulatto children with a claim to freedom. Because the fate of the child follows the status of the mother's womb. So if she's free, the child will be considered free. So they don't want all of these melanated men to quote be defiling their women and creating and basically taking their Negroes off the plantation into the land of freedom. Okay, so every time they go back to their little Congress, every time they go back to their little meetings, they're trying to find ways and make up laws of how and to stop what's going on. Virginia state law makes all imported blacks lifelong slaves unless they're Christian. So this is where perpetual servitude comes in. Okay, let me jump down a little bit. As you see, we got to give it back at 734. Let me jump down. We read about the Tignon law before, but we're not talking about Tignon laws right now, so let's continue. Let me see. 1810, the third U.S. Census reveals that America has 7.2 million people, 60,000 of them immigrants, 1.2 million of them slaves. So you can see what the proportions was at that time, the demographic of people. Let me jump down. 1830 in Virginia, a slave named Peggy and her black mate Patrick killed their master and burned his house. Peggy claims that when she refused her master's sexual advances, she was chained to a lock and kept in a meat house. At her trial, she claims she refused the man's advances because he was her father. There was another story like that. I think her name was Cecile. I think she was from Missouri, but that was wild, right? So this man, he's violating the laws. He's impregnating melanated women, having children, and then turning around trying to violate them. I didn't bring any water. Okay, this is what 1851. In January 1851 issue of the Voice of Fugitive, Henry Bibb talks about two letters in the Amherstburg Courier on December 7th, one anonymous, one named Edwin Sharwill. The letter writer complained that blacks are inferior and ignorant, and that if they are allowed to settle in Canada, they will marry the whites and degrade both races. Why was this the thought, and why was melanated people just coming out of slavery wanting to marry European people. What was going on there? Bibb's response, we think it would be paying their daughters a very poor compliment to suppose such a thing if the colored people were half as worthless as these writers have represented them. Here, yeah, her name was Cecilia. There she goes, 1855. Her name was Cecilia. And she killed her master and they put her on trial. Wait. 1858, Henry Newby, a white Virginia planter born in 1783 and growing up in Culpeper County, Virginia, frees his common law wife, Elsie Newby, born an enslaved African American. So this white Virginia planter is married in common law to Elsie Newby, okay, in Farquhar County, Virginia, about 1799. He also frees their children because he has the power to manumit them, right? In the 1850s, he owns 248 acres and at least 17 slaves. On September 17, 1858, he sells his Culpeper land, then files a deed freeing 4 slaves. Evelyn Newby, then 26, and her 3 children. The decision of most Newby family members to move with Henry Newby to the free state of Ohio liberates over a dozen people. By 1860, Newby's household has disappeared from Culpeper, and the white 77-year-old farmer lives in Bridgeport, Ohio, across the Ohio River from Wheeling. In his will, Newby acknowledges Elsie as the mother of his children and leaves most of his property to her. Very, very interesting. So this is a conversation where it's the other way, where the children were enslaved and he has to manumit the common law wife, who is a woman of color, as well as the children that he fathered with her. Again, we're looking at interracial marriage and slavery and how some people, you know what it's illustrated in? It's illustrated in Underground. It's illustrated in Underground, where what's her name? Not Josephine. What's her name's character is with the master, and her children are the master's children. Oh, now her name is gonna escape me. I did the Underground covers, but her children is the master's children, right? She has 2 children, the daughter and the son. Both of them are the master's children. So we see that some melanated people saw this as an opportunity, and they weren't necessarily, some were forced, some were coerced because they were enslaved, but this was their thought process of how they would get free if they put themselves in the position to be close enough to master. I'm just trying to broaden the conversation a little bit. Leave your comments in the box. I'm going to come over there in a minute. We're just trying to get through this. At 1861, again, the Civil War is not finished until 1865. Okay, so this is still a time of enslavement. At least 9 biracial couples live in Buxton, a black settlement near Chatham in Ontario, Canada. So you're free in Canada. 9 biracial couples. What are y'all doing up there? They include a white male and black female, and 7 black males and white females, 1 Native American male and mulatto female. Look at the statistics. People like to talk about statistics. Statistically, out of 9 biracial couples living in Canada, in Ontario in 1861, only 1 of them is a European man to a melanated woman. And 7 out of 9 were black males and white females. Who was intermarrying more with whom? And 1 Native American male to a mulatto female. Something to think about as we're having these conversations, because there's nothing new under the sun. 1867, Bill what's his name? Where in this dick? A Crenshaw, Alabama black man pays a $200 fine. Do you know how much $200 is in 1867? Y'all make me want to go look it up. And goes to jail for 30 days. Not only did he pay a hefty sum, he went to jail for 30 days for living with a white female employee. Now y'all make me want to go look up how much $250 was in 1867. And I'm going to go look it up. How much was $250 in 1867? So $1, I'm sorry, y'all. I know we're on a time limit, but you will need to end with, to adjust inflation, they have here $18.36. Wait, let me make sure. 250. $4,589.46 in today's time. He had to pay a $4,500 fine, knowing he shouldn't have been living with a European woman in 1867, and go to jail, and go to jail, and go to jail. Where's my thing at? Don't get distracted. And he did that and went to jail for 30 days. Let's talk about it, because I like history. The radical Mississippi legislature repeals the 1865 ban on racial intermarriage. So this was really an issue. It was happening. It's nothing new that's happening now. This is where a lot of people head was at, that marrying the dominant class would somehow give them a leg up on what was going on. 1880 to 1940, the myth that black men, if not restrained, will roam the country raping white women, fuels the wholesome lynching of black males during this period. It also fuels the banning of marijuana. I talked about that before. According to Tuskegee Institute, fugitives between the years of 1882 and 1951, 4,730 people were lynched in the United States. 3,437 Negro. And did we know that there were 1,293 European people or white people were lynched? I wonder what they were lynching them for. 1,293 white people were lynched because they were punishing them as well, basically. Where did it go? My apologies. I wanted to see one of the actual stories that I read where they dressed up to try to get to Canada so that they can live together. Let me see if I can get that story. Hold on a second. Let me stop my screen so that when I'm scrolling, it's not giving you morning sickness. Morning sickness. I'm sorry, did I say morning sickness? My bad, I didn't mean to say morning sickness. Hold on. It goes into modern times. Let me see if I can get an actual story that we can read so we can get into it. I'm going to come to the comment section in a minuto. Hold on. My point is that early on, this was happening. Very early on. That's why they began to make laws against it from happening. I don't have the physical book, so I have to be scrolling through all of this stuff. The man who couldn't grow a beard. Let me see, is this him? It's not him, but I kind of said what I wanted to say on that. There's a part that I wanted to read, but let me come and see your comments first, and then we can see if we can get a little bit of reading in. Okay, let's go. Thank you, Queen T. Shout out to the Yummy Cottage. But why would a free white woman marry an enslaved black man? Very good questions. Very good questions. We have to dig more into history to find out. We have to dig more in history to find out. That's very good questions. Again, it's there. It was happening. We have to see why. Do you think also race was looked at differently then? Yep. It like I said, it was progressive. Even where you were coming from was looked at differently. You understand? If you were from England, it was one thing. If you were Irish, you were at the bottom of the chart. You see that illustrated in I know people don't like the Roots illustration, but it's illustrated in Roots. So, these things evolve over time. If you were Scottish, you were looked at differently. If you're English, if you were from Spain. All of these different ethnic groups were looked at differently until they realized that they can get farther by just saying you were, if you were Jewish, you were looked at differently, right there. So there was a class system even amongst the Europeans. But when they wanted to consolidate the power so that they can push forward their agenda, they kind of put that to a side a little bit so that they can form this kind of black and white conversation. You really need to learn all the foundational history. The fact, what he said, you don't know why we are mad about what's the matter, boss. We sick. I mean, that's a Malcolm X reference again, John. That's a Malcolm X reference. I think I know quite a bit about foundational Black history. That's funny that you say that. Like I said, but just based on what you said, it doesn't even appear that you went over to the link to look at all of the Lev Project information. This is why I'm saying what I'm saying, because I know more than the average bear about this conversation. And when you apply yourself to learning, you move from being triggered to understanding. Like that picture, somebody who doesn't take the time or hasn't taken the time to find out what was going on would be triggered. They would be upset. But if you took the time to say, okay, let me ask some questions, what's going on here, then it takes you out of being reactionary and takes you into a space of being to process what you're seeing and how you're seeing what you're seeing. Like I said, if the thing was historically inaccurate, then I could see why you're upset. But if you're upset because it happened and you have not yet accepted it or you have not yet processed it, then say that. Just by saying I'm mad, what is that saying? It's like you may be in a relationship and the person is saying you're mad about what? How can we move through? How can we move forward if I don't even know what you're mad about? I don't even know what you're upset about. So I'm very aware. I'm very aware. Um, yeah, I'm very aware. Why do they come out? This is, you're asking a serious question. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. The same thing Nasha's asking, but this was, they weren't even coming out of the slavery. A lot of them were in slavery doing it, right? They were in slavery wanting to marry. And this is why I says, this is why I said we need to have these conversations. How to add people in the chat, LF? I think if you're on your phone, I notice when I'm on my phone, I'm not able to add people. But when I'm on the laptop, I'm able to add people. So I don't know if somebody knows how to add people in the chat. Let's know, because I'll be trying to figure that out too. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes their name goes fast. Those were basically sex slaves that had been brainwashed to love whites. No, I wouldn't say that. Not based on what I've read. Mm, mm, mm. Are white women so attractive to black men? We're going to go read now. I would say to Nasha's question is that, again, when we say attractive, when we say what makes somebody attractive, is not just physical attributes. It's what that person represents, right? So if this person represents freedom, if this person represents autonomy, if this person represents escape from my current position or condition, then that makes that person attractive. Like even some jobs that people want in like lawyers and doctors, in and of itself, that job might not be attractive, but the status that society gives you when you take on the title of lawyer or when you take on the title of doctor makes it attractive. So it is with people. When society gave people different positionings, being in close proximity to that person became attractive, right? So you what is John saying? You don't know as you keep saying things, asking questions about what's going on. Took that picture. He was no, he was not. Again, I don't know if you heard the conversation before. The dude is not even from here, and the people who took the picture is not even from here, and that picture is not from here. This is what I'm saying. Again, one of my observations. Hold on, y'all gonna make me run out of time on the other side. Let me go on the other side and read so that we don't run out of time, and then we'll be back over here. Again, what I find not only but foundational Black Americans, as John keeps saying, Caribbean. There's a lot of people who don't know history, and they keep trying to talk the loudest or talk the hardest and talk the strongest to convince us with emotion, appeal to emotion that we should be outraged about X, Y, and Z without even taking the time to process the history for ourselves. So I know why I'm asking the questions that I'm asking. I think I've been in this space for long enough to know what I'm seeing, because I'm the one who felt the pushback. I'm the one who was going through it and hearing the feedback and felt the pushback and everything for not even wanting to look at it. But the minute somebody else comes to look at it, or the minute somebody else shows it of another nationality, then we're like, oh, I can't believe it. But when we have the opportunity to do it for ourselves, we don't want to. So this is why I call foul. I call B. You know what I'm saying? Because when we have the opportunity to be amongst ourselves and have real life conversations, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. Queen T said, yes, I've listened to Amuna for a while and she has dove deeply into it. Correct. 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 Um, so my being saying that we just want somebody to be mad at. We don't really want to, for the most part, go into the information and move through it. But for the sake of time, before this book is due, let's go back and read a little bit about the situation. Wait, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there yet because I'm gonna run out of time. Hold on one second. This is the book. Um, I want to come back another time and talk about love in a time of hate. It's going to take me a while to read that. It's going to take me a while to read that. So I don't just want to I don't want to do it any disservice. Hold on one second. All of these things are like pieces on the puzzle, pieces of the puzzle that we have to put together. Right? There's some European women that fell in love with the melanated men they were trying to rescue. Remember, they're watching them. There's all kind of different scenarios. There's all kind of different scenarios. Um, they're stressing me with this time limit right here. Hold on. This is not the one. There was one that I read that she dressed up and they went on a train and they were trying to go. Is it the man who couldn't grow a beard? Let me see. Ellen and William Craft. No. One dressed up like a man. No, that's not it. Y'all could come over here and peruse this book if you want to. If you're able to find it before me, let me know. Um, and then we bring it back to the conversation that we have and we continue. It's very informational. Like I said, a timeline is important. To understand how things progressed is important. Y'all give me some moment. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna come back on this here conversation because I don't feel as prepared as I should be. Uh, Finding the exact place that I wanted to talk about. Let me release the screen. Yep, it's layers, Queen T. Political freedom, education freedom, financial strength. It's definitely layers to this. And again, you know, just talking about it, I know what I can do. Just talking about what we think we know, like we're quoting movies, bruh. We're quoting Malcolm X movie. Can we show we where in all of the slave narratives that was left on record that statement was? We're quoting Malcolm X movies. We're quoting Roots. We're quoting all of these things because that is the extent to the understanding of that we have of this topic, which is terrible. And at this point, we have a choice. At this point, we have a choice. Let me read about Elizabeth Key Grimstead so this can help a little bit. At this point, we're doing it to ourselves. We can't even blame anybody else. Let me read about the law being changed and why it was changed. Let's see. Here she is. Elizabeth Key Grimstead. Oh, I'm wondering why you can't see. I thought you were seeing everything that I was doing, but I forgot to take this thing off. Now you can see. My apologies. This whole time, y'all didn't tell me y'all couldn't see. Who's being facts are facts. That's right, Queen T. Facts are facts. We gotta, we gotta work through the emotions. I mean, it's gonna be emotional, but we gotta work through them. We can't let it stop us. It says Elizabeth Key Grimstead, 1630, and she died 1665, was one of the first Black people of the 13 colonies, listen, to sue for freedom from slavery and win. So remember, as I told you, the laws were a work in progress. When somebody slipped through a crack, they made a law the law because they were in the ruling class. Okay. Elizabeth Key won her freedom and that of her infant, John Grimstead, on July 21st, 1656, in the colony of Virginia. Key based her suit on the fact that her father was an Englishman who acknowledged her and arranged her baptism as a Christian in the American branch of the Church of England. He was a wealthy planter who tried to protect her by establishing a guardianship for her when she was young, before his death. Based on these factors, her attorney and common law husband, William Grimstead, argued successfully that she should be freed. The lawsuit was one of the earliest freedom suits by an African descendant person in the English colonies. Listen, so this woman, now the question is, was William Grimstead a European? There's a likelihood, right? So she's born of a melanated woman. Father was a European. He claimed her, okay? And like we read the other day, the law coming from England is that the child follows the status of the father. So he's free, she's free. So she gets with a man named William, and now they sue for her freedom, for that of her and her child. William Grimstead argued successfully that she should be free. Okay, I read that already. In response to Key's suit and other challenges, the Virginia House of Burgess passed a law, that's what we just read, in 1662, establishing that the social status of children born in the colony, bond or free, would follow the social status of their respective mother. So once Elizabeth Key Grimstead slipped through the cracks and they had to give her her freedom, they changed the laws to a Roman law. This is where, to a Roman law, that the child is going to follow the mother. So if the mother is enslaved, more than likely Black enslaved, then that child would also be enslaved. The law differed from English colony law. These are two different laws. Remember, America is an English colony. This is even early on, before 1776, America is beginning to change from what England is doing. This law differed from English law, common law, in which children's social status were determined by their fathers, who had an obligation to support both legitimate and illegitimate children. Virginia and other colonies incorporated a principle known as partus secutor ventrium, or partus, relating to chattel's property. The legislation hardened the boundaries of slavery by ensuring that all children born to enslaved, this is why I said the Black man would more likely be willing to go to the European woman, because that meant that his offspring, the condition of his offspring, would follow that of the mother. If the mother is free, the child is free. It would more advantageous for the slave master to impregnate the woman, because if he wanted to make more slave babies, then her children would belong on to him. We're looking at law and how it changed the social construct and how it affected the relationships. This is sobering. Okay. Regardless of paternity or proportion of European ancestry would be born into slavery unless explicitly freed. The legislation hardened the boundaries of slavery by ensuring that all children born to enslaved women, regardless of paternity or appropriation of, meaning no matter how much European blood, if that woman is melanated and if she's enslaved, then that child is going to be enslaved. Okay, this is what I was referring to yesterday, right? Let me jump down to the case in the freedom suit for a second. Let's see here. John, it's okay. You're going to get some learning, John. This is something that you can go back and look for yourself, right? Let's look at the freedom suit. Let me see here. Hold on one second. You can go and look this up yourself. If you're not willing to look at the laws and what has happened and how we got here and how it affected the relationships, because this is where the people are talking about critical race theory. They're telling you that it's something that is coming out of law school because it's looking at how the laws determine what we're seeing here, what changed the society and what changed. So it's coming from a law that trickles down onto people and society and how they interface with one another. We can't get away from the fact that these things were encoded. Black laws were encoded. Jim Crow laws were encoded. All of these things were encoded and people's behaviors began to change around for or against these laws that were put in place. I read that already. You could come here and read this yourself. She wins, and after she wins, they're like, yep, nobody else is going to do that to us again. And this is where this type of conversation continued, like in the incidents in the life of a slave girl and the things that we see surrounding how some melanated women saw getting with European men as a way in which to ease some of the oppression. And in likewise, we see the men doing it as well. Let me read aftermath. As a result of Elizabeth Key freedom suit in December 1662, the Virginia House of Burgesses passed a colonial law to clarify the status of children of women of Negro descent around, quote, doubts that have arisen whether children got by Englishmen upon a Negro woman should be slave or free, end quote. It is required that children born in the colony to take the status of the mother, whether bond or free, using the principle of partia secutor ventrum. The statute was the departure from the English common law tradition in which a child of English subjects received his or her social status and or obligation of support from his or her father. I told you this is the beginning of the epidemic, the phenomenon of single motherhood here, because now he's no longer in law accountable for this child. He's no longer responsible for this child. The status is following that of the mother. So if the mother doesn't have gainful employment, then the child is impoverished. If the mother is not even valid in law, she's not a whole person, then the child is no longer a whole person. So this changed the way society looked at women, the way society looked at men, and the expectations that they had for both. Okay, you could come and check this out. That's the name of the woman for the sake of time. Let me stop here. I know John is probably kicking and screaming in the comment section, John. John, you're going to have to come with a little bit more. You're going to have to come with a little bit more that you didn't learn that when you learned that when you were and Queen T is saying the loving case, which came later on. This is early on. This is 1600s. They're not teaching about no Elizabeth Key Grimstead in school. They're not teaching about Elizabeth Key Grimstead in school. I mean, come on, man. Let's stop playing. Guess what? Get all of the people who you say, no, that's not true, John. That's incorrect. The 1960s, that's incorrect. I could pull up a census that I was looking at from the early 1900s that they were finding that many of the women were saying that they were widowed. And they were not widowed. They were single mothers. They were single mothers, but they were putting on the census that they were widowed. And then they come back another year and they got more children. They weren't widowed. They were single mother. There was a lot of single motherhood going on before the 1960s. This is what we would like to believe, again, because it's difficult, and I understand it. It happened in the Caribbean. It happened in South America. It's difficult to look at certain things, right? So we want to look through history and try to find like the boogeyman. What do you think, John, of the man who was willing to pay $4,589.46 in today's space and time, but in 1867 it was equivalent to $250 and 30 days in jail because he was cohabitating with a European woman? What are your thoughts on that, John? Is that not true either? Let me see. Oh, I didn't show you guys a picture of Elizabeth Key Grimsted. Hold on. No, they did not. They did not. There's so many. Does John know about John? Let me show you something. There is something called this. You don't have to believe me because this is, to me, it doesn't really benefit me to go back and forth like this. But I'm just going to possibly share something with you. You may or may not have known, right? So I'm gonna pull this up. I've shared it here before. I freely share information because each one teach one, right? There was something called, again, people like the Federal Writers Project. Okay. Let me pull my screen up. I shared this here before. We've read a lot of it, and I'll share it again because, some people are new. There's something called the Federal Writers Project. And as I'm reading now some history, because I'm taking a history course again, what I found out was that during the Depression, they had allocated some funds in the New Deal to employ people to go out on the road. So when I read the Federal Writers Project, before I knew it. So when I read it, I was like, oh, wait a minute, I've heard about this before. So what happened is that not Grimsted, where are we? No, that's not what I'm looking for. What I found out is that they funded the historians, librarians, they funded people to go out in the community to collect the stories of the slave narrative stories. For those who at that time would have been 70, 80, 90 years old, they were born into slavery. And I actually have it on my computer. I'm going to show you where to get it right now. And these are the stories of those who lived. One of the problems I find is that we like to reimagine other people's reality, which is not, it's not honoring them. We think we're honoring them by telling them what they experienced, but refuse to read what they experienced. Where did it go? Here, the Writers Project. So here it is. This was during the Great Depression. They went out, come to find out, they went out for 6 months and they gathered. This is the Federal Writers Project. This is not the stuff that I'm saying, I'm not making up. I've taken the time, the effort, and the energy and my resources to learn so that I'm informed when I'm talking. New Deal programs, that's what I just said. Selected Library of Congress research. Now, let me say something to you. All of this is accessible at the click of a button. Okay? Federal Writers Project was created in 1835 as part of the United States Works Progress Administration to provide employment for historians, teachers, writers, librarians, and other white-collar workers. Originally, the purpose of the project was to produce a series of sectional guidebooks under the name American Guide, focused the scenery, historical, cultural, and economic resources of the United States. Now, if you go down here, Born in Slavery, Narratives from the Federal Writers Project, and you click on it, and you come to the Library of Congress, and you scroll down here, you get to see about the Born in Slavery slave narratives from the Federal Writers Project. 1936 to 1938 contains more than 2,300 first-person accounts of slavery. That means first person is the best. Okay, let me just say first-person accounts. Prime witnesses who actually experienced, not us, who's 2, 3, 4 generations removed. This is their experience, and 500 black and white photos of former slaves. They were collected, and they're there for all of your, here goes all the volumes. I have these saved on my computer. So they were in Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Maryland, Mississippi, Missouri, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. They dispatched people, and you can read more about the project. And if you want to see what they actually said, what they actually felt, not what Malcolm X, all respect to Malcolm X was illustrating a point. Malcolm X was illustrating a point. But this is what the people were actually saying. It doesn't negate the point that Malcolm X was illustrating. But if you want to respect and honor the ancestors and those became before us, let them tell their story. That's what I'm saying. If we click on anybody, let me see here. If you click on it, this is Arkansas. Some slave states, like those in the West, did not have slavery the way Virginia may have had, or Mississippi may have had, or different places may have had. All of these historical things, they matter. If you click on the beginning, make it bigger. Here we go. You see this? Interviews with the actual people in the lives that they actually live. Not Farrakhan telling me, not Malcolm X telling me, not Elijah Muhammad telling me. They're telling me. They're telling me. This is prime resources, Arkansas narratives. And if you're going to ask if I've looked at it, yes, I have. Every single one of them, no. But enough to be able to refute some of the things that I'm hearing. You can say their names. You can, we read a book on here called Weevils in the Wheat. Weevils in the Wheat, which is also a collection of narratives. Check that book out as well. So in these books, you will hear about where they were born. This person whose name is, it tells you the interviewer. It tells you the name of the person, Silas Abbott. It tells you their age. They tell you where they were born, about their mother and their father, how many brothers and sisters they were. There was 8 of us children, and none of us was sold. Let me just read this for an example. Because people like to say everybody was beat, everybody was sold, everybody was raped, everybody was starving. This is not true. I know it's hard. I know it's going to force us to not put everything in black and white. But hey, if we're going to be truthful, we have to be truthful. Now we're going to say everybody's lying and our reimagination is correct. This person, and I'm going to leave it here. This person's name is Silas Abbott. He was 73 years old at the time that this was done. Interviewer was Miss Irene Robertson, number 30468. I was born in Chickasaw County, Mississippi. Ellie Abbott and Maggie Abbott was our owners, hence the name, right? They had 3 girls and 2 boys, Eddie and Johnny. We played together till I was grown. I loved them like if they was my brothers. Papa and Mose Ellie went to war together in a 2-horse top buggy. They both came back when they got through. So what war was that? More than likely it's the Civil War, right? There was 8 of us children. None of us was sold. None gave away. My parents' name was Peter. What's his mother's name? Mahaly Abbott. My father was never sold, but my mother was sold into this Abbott family for a house girl. She cooked and washed and ironed. She was a wet nurse, but she tended to Eddie and Johnny and me all alike. She whooped them when they needed. And Miss Maggie whooped me. That the way we growed up. Mose Ellie was septally good, I reckon. No, I never heard of him drinking whiskey. They made cider and cinnamon beer every year. Grandpa was a soldier in the war. He fought in a battle. I don't know the battle. He wasn't hurt. He come home and told us how awful it was. My parents stayed on at Mose Elbley and my uncle's family stayed on. Didn't mean stayed on after the war. People left or people stayed as sharecroppers. He gave my uncle a home and 20 acres of ground. Remember, the project came. Reconstruction was supposed to give land. Some people individually gave it. Some people were supposed to get it. Others didn't. He's saying that his uncle got 20 acres. And my parents, same amount to run a gin. I drove 2 mules. My brothers drove 2, and we drove 2 more between us. These are individual stories. And run the, let me see. I'll make this bigger, yo. Hold on. Make it bigger. Where are we? Where am I? My auntie seen somebody go in the gin one night, but didn't think about them setting it on fire. They had a torch, I reckon, in there. All I know, it burned up, and Mose Eisley had to take our land back and sell it to pay for 400 or 500 bales of cotton got burnt up that time. We stayed on and sharecropped with him. We lived between Egypt and Arkalon, Mississippi. Aberdeen was our trading point. And he goes on. Again, then you can cite this specific man in his specific instance of where he came from and his experience. How can we go back and tell him, nah, that ain't happened like that because such and such told us otherwise? I'm like, you know what? For me, that's just a bit much. That's all I'm saying. If we want somebody to tell them story, let's let them tell their story. Let's let them tell their story. Um, A husband had one of his relatives story like that through Liberian writers. If you go to the plantation here, it was that info on the wall at the Whitney plantation. Yeah, hey, Queen Nzinga, what's going on? They were documented. This is none said everyone was raped. Yeah, I've heard people say that. I've heard people say that, John. I've heard people say that. I've heard people say that. Yeah, I've heard people trying to. Again, my point is this. And I guess this is a part where I'm impassioned about because I realize how little they've actually taught us. There's so many resources. This is just one of them. The Library of Congress has hundreds. What did we read? 2,500 voices, original voices of those who were enslaved, telling you their names. We over here talking about say their name. They're telling you their names. They're telling you where they lived. They're telling you their experience. And if we care so much, like we say we do, and we're so offended, like we say we are, all I'm saying is give voice to their story. Not the one that you want it to be, but the one that actually is. And I'm not preaching from a pulpit that I have not stood on and gone through in my own space, not just here on YouTube, but to learn and to give back their humanity, because slavery is a process that dehumanizes people, and allowing people to speak for themselves, express their interest, their likes and dislikes, and to let you know that they were not a two-dimensional being, and they had joys, and they had pain, and they had love, and they had hurt, and they had hopes, and they had ambitions. Let them tell you. Let them tell you, and then you refer to them and you give them voice, and that allows us to move the conversation forward. It's part of the healing process. It's what helped me to heal. Right? Because it was hard to hear. This is how I know stories about people like Suki, which was an urban legend at that time. What I found is that Suki came up a lot of times during the conversations in different people's. If you read this book, I'm gonna give you another book. First of all, this is free. The only thing it's gonna cost you is time. This is at the Library of Congress. Let me drop this in the box. Okay. And another helpful website I'm gonna give you right now. If we're really interested, if we're really so offended by everything we see, and I can't believe the person did this, I can't believe it. If we're so offended, then let's put in the work. So we can make references, and we can give citations, and we can, you know, let the story begin to fill in the way this stuff existed. Interracial marriages existed during slavery. This is why all these laws were there to prevent it, because it was happening. So Elizabeth Key Grinstead, I'm giving homework today, y'all. I'm giving homework today. I'm just dropping it in the box. I'm dropping it in the box. The Federal Writers Project. If we start at 1960 one more time, I'm a run up and down and like scream, man. We cannot start at 1960. It's wrong. When I come back another time, I'm going to read the first story in the book because that talks about what happened between the male and the female, based on, and we've heard some of it before, but based on the situation. But I don't have enough time right now. Hold on one second. Here, these anti-miscegenation laws that I keep bringing up, I'm gonna share my screen one more time. So I'm not trying to be like, um, you know, oh, I know, because I'm always like, hey, let's go look. Everybody like, nah, I don't want to look. I don't want to see that. And then something happens. Oh, I'm so mad. Oh, I'm like, well, what you mad about? Are you mad that you don't want to watch Underground? You don't want to watch slave movies. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to read about it. You don't want to process the information. But every time you see it, you want to be mad. Anti-miscegenation laws or miscegenation laws are laws that enforce racial segregation at the level of marriage and intimate relationships by criminalizing interracial marriage and sometimes also sex between members of different races. Anti-miscegenation laws were first introduced in North America from the late 17th century onwards by several of the 13 colonies and subsequently by U.S. states and U.S. territories and remained in force in the U.S. states until 1967. Okay? Loving versus Virginia, which is what Queen T is mentioning. This is later on in the 60s, but this is happening. They say the first ever anti-miscegenation law was passed by Maryland General Assembly in 1691, criminalizing interracial marriages. Why did they have to do that? They're saying in a speech to Charleston, Illinois in 1858, Abraham Lincoln stated, I am not nor ever have been in favor of voters, of jurors, of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. Why was this a conversation if it wasn't an issue? Okay, let me go down here. And we see it happening in different places, but as it relates to this specific conversation in America, yeah, it was happening. Okay, I didn't know that. While interracial marriage had been legal in California since 1948, in 1957, actor Samuel Davis Jr. faced backlash for his relationship with a white actress. Davis briefly married a black dancer in 1958 to protect himself from mob violence. Can you imagine? So now they make me want to go see who was the white actress. So he just got a token melanated woman so that they wouldn't limb him up. Very, very fascinating. So we have Abraham Lincoln speaking about this. We have Maryland General Assembly criminalizing it in 1691. It's definitely something that has been going on for many different reasons. Okay, Sammy Davis Jr., we're going to have to do a little research on you, brother. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. That I have one more resource I want to give you. The Federal Writers Project. Oh gosh, no. There's so much in my head, you guys, you wouldn't believe. It's like people collect things like I collect information. Like, oh man, my tabs is crazy. Oh man, that would be enough for now. When it comes back to me, then I'll share it. Wait, there was something else. If you want to hear us reading, but I was a little less. Let me just say, a little less tempered back then, a few years ago. So some of this stuff really did get me pissed off while reading. Some of this stuff really got me tight while reading, so I can't promise that I'm more refined. Let me just say during those times. Another thing that always fascinates me. Let me show you some pictures, and then I'll go on the Federal Writers Project. which came about out of the Great Depression. So there's something good that came out of the Great Depression in relations to, if they didn't keep a lot of these things on record, we wouldn't know, right? But let me see. Wait a minute. This one, yeah, born. Let's look at some of the pictures. Reading, they have some receipts as payment for Kate, an enslaved woman, 1834. You get to pull this stuff up. You get to, I don't know, it's cool for me. I don't know anybody else, but you get to look at and read the notices, like I was talking about manumission papers, right? I was talking about that earlier. You get to look at some people's manumission papers. You get another 500 payment for a Negro man. This is when they're buying people, literally. You get to look at legal documents. You get to look at pictures of the actual people. This is not Hollywood movies. He's pushing a cart. You get to see their actual faces. Let me see here. Georgia Florini. This picture was taken in 1937. Somebody's great great grandmother. She looks small. She looks petite. You see her silver hair. And if you find her story, what I find cool is like if you find her story and then you get to put the face to the story. It just makes it more real and less, uh, you know, of our imagination that we have to use to recreate the reality. Present day mother and child, not pure Negro. This is what they wrote on the thing. So if we click on this woman was mixed, clearly. They say not pure Negro. So we don't know if it was her mother or her father. And then she has a baby. You know what I mean? That's somebody's grandparent right now. Anyway, I happen to find this stuff interesting. I did it for my own family. I went back and dug through the crates just like this. I wasn't able to find a lot of pictures, but I did find a lot of documentation. This is somebody's great 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 grandmother, Molly Williams. She's 84, and this is in 1937. So you know what I mean? This stuff is dope, yo. I don't know about nobody else. I'd rather not argue. I'd rather just get real time data than arguing. Because that's just people trying to prove their point without really giving anybody like what's the take home? What's the takeaway? This man's name is Ben. Look at Ben. Look at Ben's face. Look at Ben. Ben looks mixed too. They called him Hondo. Yeah, Ben looks like he's small. He looks, I don't know if it's the picture. Ben look a little short to me. Which I think Ben looks short. Hondo. Anywho, as you can see, I'm enjoying myself. So give me a minute, just looking at the faces and the names and all right. Manuscripts, images, and city. So, I also wanted to say if you're looking sometimes for family and any one of your places that you may have remembered your family came from, and you just search through some of these things, you never know. Years ago, I interviewed a brother on this channel who said that he found his lineage through and got to understand that one of the books we was reading was one of his distant relatives. So that was cool. That was awesome as well. I'm just reading back what you guys were saying. You're welcome, Queen T. Oh, it was Kim Novak. Oh, let me go look at who Kim Novak was. It was Kim Novak. Okay, Queen Nzinga said it was Kim Novak. Let's go see who Sammy Davis Jr. was really to get limbed up for. Let's see who this good woman is. Seriously? Say words, Sammy. Hold on. Sammy's doing the most, absolute most. Let's thank you. Shout out to you. See, that's why the lovely listeners and supporters. Yeah, because I don't know everything. Let's look at what I keep saying. What time is it? Hold on. Let's see here. Kim Novak, you say. Let's go over there and mind Kim Novak's business. The secret love affair between Kim Novak and Sammy Davis Jr., one of Hollywood's most powerful people, stopped. Davis got in touch with a singer who worked at the Silver Slipper Club in Vegas, Lorraine White, whom he had briefly dated in the past. Davis offered White $25,000 to marry him. What? Oh my goodness! Say word, cause they what? What? Did he try to do a 90-day fiance marriage, yo? What are you saying to me? It's kind of like the guy who had to pay for the living. The secret and dangerous love affair between Kim Novak. So, what degree would the melanated man at this time like go to risk life and limb? Um, let's see here. It was 53 years ago. Da 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 dee. Da 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 da. It didn't stop him. 1957, beginning a sizzling, secretive affair with the greatest living entertainer in the world, did not stop her until the mob became involved and lives were put at risk. In the fall of 1957, had just finished filming Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo when she met up with friends in Chicago, then hottest nightclub. Da da da. Confided to his friends that he wished to meet her. Are we serious? They were inseparable, spending time the entire evening together. It was electric. The next day, in the small section of gossip column, which top female is seriously dating with big name entertainer, the news spread. And then he pays a melanated woman $25,000 to fake pretend that she was his wife. What? I'm sorry, we may have to take a look at this in another time, peoples. Forbade her from seeing him. No compromise, but all counts. Very, very interesting stuff. They wanted her to end it. She didn't comply. She arranged bodyguards to wait in front of Novak's home to ensure Davis didn't show up. They continued to hide their relationship. I'm just reading the highlights here. Private house in Malibu Beach. What? Say it ain't so, Sammy. Hold on. He's in the Oval House with Richard Nixon. Let me. This is a very interesting storyline here. In January 19, Davis got in touch with a singer who worked in Silver Slipper Club. Davis offered $25,000 to marry him and act as his wife. After the year that they would dissolve their marriage and go their separate ways, White agreed to his proposal, and the contract hit against Davis was dropped. Waya said to me, I'm done. Wow. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm going to have to, my apologies. Thanks for bearing with me. That was interesting stuff right there. Woohoo. Okay. Okay. Let me show, let's see what else here. Slave auction. Let me see. Listen to some of them on our next reading. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, Queen T. We ain't never gonna be out of material. Yeah, historical information. I love it too. The Shrine of a Black Madonna had receipts, actual pictures, and equipments. Wow. Mara says, hey fam, great resources, Moon and family. I'm definitely going to go to the Library of Congress and learn about ancestors. Pictures are of lighter melanated people are not all mixed. No, then there's all different type of people up there. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of stuff going on, y'all. My apologies. I got sucked in. This is how it happens for me. It's not a game. But again, thank everybody for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to share. I put the link in the box. Let me give you the link for the you only could borrow it one person at a time. Hold on, let me return it. If you want to look at the link for the Forbidden Fruit book, you can go on to archive.org. I'm gonna drop the link in the box. But you only can borrow it just for an hour at a time, unless you want to buy it, and that's available on Amazon. So this is the book right here. And Amazon has the first, what do you call it? They have the first chapter for free. So if you want to read over that, we're going to do that reading when we come back another time. So if you want to read and be a little ahead of the game, you can read it over at Amazon for free, that first chapter. So we can have the conversation about what went on based on the psychology of slavery and the split and how we got to where we are now. So with that said, hopefully this has been informative. I see John is no longer fighting the feeling. I see John is like, I'm done. In all honesty, I try to keep a smile on my face, but John, you come back. He said, thank you for coming by, John, and we appreciate your presence. In all honesty, like I said, we can shine light in darkness by being willing to just have the conversations, just like the grandma's secrets. It's an unwillingness to learn what we don't know, and put down the whole I know type thought and just allow history to tell us something. It's like when the elders are talking, I just sit and listen. Even if I think I've heard the story. When my grandfather was at the end and he would just tell the same story over and over, I would just sit there and listen and even act like I never heard it before, because that's just his mind seemed to go back to what most impacted him. And I would just allow him to speak or allow them to speak and just take a mental of of it. And that's how we learn. But if we go into those conversations thinking we already know, then we're not going to retain the information. So hopefully this was helpful. We'll come back again and continue to have the conversations that we need to have so that we can be better informed. With that said, thank everybody for tuning in. Oh, hold on. Let me cue the music. Cue the music. This is the book cover right here, Forbidden Fruit, Love Stories from the Underground Railroad by Betty Duramos. That's the book. That is the book.